I'd like to talk about why we haven't had the show for a month. I was supposed to take a trip to Washington 2 weeks ago. There was a CPAC event, and I talked about that in the video. The conservative movement, you know, the Tea Party movement, kind of took a foothold in CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference. And so, you know, the Campaign for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, all these libertarian-type organizations kind of took their foothold, and Ron Paul won the event with 31%. So, but I wasn't able to go. It just circumstances. I would have definitely taken a trip down there, and I would have definitely taped it. I wish I could have gone, but there's plenty of video out there. Go find Ron Paul's speech. Go check out Freedom Watch on Fox.com. They, you know, that's the RSS feed, and they had a show at CPAC, and you know they had 6 speakers on a panel, such as Jacob Hornberger, Tom Woods, people like that. So check it out. But anyway, I'm sure you guys heard about this plane crash in Texas. It wasn't necessarily an accident. Joe Stack was a man that was kind of down on his luck, if you will. He had a lot of issues with the IRS, and he basically took a plane and did a suicide plane crash into the IRS building in Austin. Now, I can understand what happened. I understand why he did it. Like, I understand, you know, what took him to that level. You know, the IRS is just taxed him to death, pretty much literally. But he, in my opinion, he went a little bit too far. He could have just tried to express himself in a different way, and you know, tried to contact people to get the IRS off his back. But then again, this has been going on since the 80s for him. And so now I think it's only like one IRS agent was killed, and most of the IRS agents weren't even in the building at the time, which leads me to believe that they knew it was going to happen type of thing on that day, but that's just going out of bounds. Basically what happened, he took a plane and tried to make a political statement, if you will. And he also, you know, he basically left a letter as to why he did all this, his whole history with the IRS. So I saved that email, and I forgot to bring it here because I'm a smart guy. But yeah, you can definitely find that letter if you're interested. You can find that on the web anywhere almost. So yeah, I already talked about the IRS on this show. You know, I'll get into it again at some other point. But yeah. So enough of that. I'd also like to, I believe at the same day, on the same day as that plane crash, the Federal Reserve raised their interest rates, which is the buyback rate on loans made to big banks. So I believe that's the same day. That's just strange. It could have been like a day apart though. But so the Federal Reserve, we talked about the interest rates as to what happens. They loan out money to the banks, and then the banks have to pay back those loans with interest. But all the while, they're making loans out to us. So they're making a ton of money, while the Fed is making a ton more money. But that's how inflation works. that whole, aggregation of money, loaning out, and the fractional reserve system. But this is how, this makes me very worried, because right now we're still in a very vulnerable state. Unemployment's over 10% or something like that. And the real unemployment is probably around 17 or 18%. And in Massachusetts, we do have 9.2% unemployment, which is really strange, because I don't see many foreclosures in Massachusetts compared to a place such as California or something. They're hit hard. But anyway, that's besides the point. But the whole thing is the Federal Reserve raised their interest rates, and we're still in a very vulnerable state. And this will, well, as Peter Schiff would say, this could cause a dollar crisis. And this is why I started talking about gold and stuff, gold, silver, that kind of thing. People are predicting, oh crap, you know what, I can't even talk about it because I don't know who said this, but basically there have been predictions that silver would be around 1,500, in a year or two, which means I'd get a nice little chunk of change off of the 2 bars of silver I've got. That's nice. But anyway, so that's far beyond the point, and I'll look into that and talk about the predictions on silver and gold and such in the future. So another piece of news. We have, yes, I think this was today. Business Insider had a, yes, this was today. Business Insider had an article. It's titled, "You Could Now Be Arrested in America Just for Mentioning Europe's Problems Over Dinner." It might be a little far-fetched, but the idea is that the U.S. doesn't want any news to be reported on the EU's problems, specifically with their currency, and Greece at that, which causes more of a problem with the currency. Inside they quoted a Wall Street Journal article. The euro currently trades at $1.36. One of the questions investigators are likely to examine is whether such information sharing constitutes collusion, which is funny. Okay, so the whole thing is they don't want people to trade euros for dollars quickly, that is, because that would cause a currency crisis for the euro. So if people are talking about it heavily, about getting out of the euro and going over to the dollar or other such medium, then then that would cause a problem, and the European Union, almost all of Europe would have a big problem. So yeah, that's just, go check this out. This is Business Insider. It was authored by Vincent Fernando, sorry, excuse me. Anyway, enough of that. So, I'd like to talk about a somewhat simple, an old saying. You know the story, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. A boy was in the field, and he had a bunch of sheep, and then he isn't looked well upon, by most of the village. But then, in order to get their praise, the boy would say, there's a wolf," and everybody would come running, and, "Oh, wait, I chased the wolf away," and everybody would praise him for it. And then he would do this 4 nights in a row, and on the 4th night, you know, a wolf really comes. But what happens? Nobody else comes running to him because they think he's lying, because it happens so often. So what happens? The boy and the flock were gobbled up. What's the moral here? Don't lie, because eventually it's going to catch up to you. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that a lot of people are seeing through politicians' lies.